Thanks everyone for joining us today. We will be talking, it's Ghali and Rina Alexin here from Productside. And today we will be talking and sharing tips and advice on how to land your next product management job. I'm actually calling in all the way from Doylestown, Pennsylvania. I'm traveling right now, but normally I'm in sunny Miami. And Joe, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I was saying before, I'm calling in from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where it's
Hmm.
sunny and warm. Which we haven't, these are words we don't use very often in the Midwest in May. So it's usually cold and rainy. So I'm very happy with the sun today, Rena.
Well, usually it's sunny for me, but now
I
we're
know it's always sunny in Miami. I know, you don't have to rub it in.
All right. Well, everyone, what we thought about today, and before we get started, we are going to go over some housekeeping items. But I did want to share with the audience tuning in that Joe and I we talked a lot about how can we make this webinar extremely valuable. So what we're doing is a little bit different from some other content that we have. And if you stay tuned for the end, we will be sharing links on how you can download two very helpful templates, career planning template and how to get hired workbook. But this really is a webcast meant for the audience. So we're going to be sharing tips and advice on how to get noticed and how to get hired. But we really want this to be a dialogue. So as always, please chime in your questions in the Q&A, and I'll share in a bit how you can do that. But Joe and I will take questions throughout this webinar, and we also have time for Q&A at the end. All right, Joe, let's get started with some housekeeping items. Okay, so for those of you who do not know us, we are Productside. We consider ourselves an outcome-driven product partner. What that means is we really care about the results that we create for our clients. And the reason why clients choose us is because we offer a complete solution for transformation. That's not just courses, that's also advisory work. And we tailor all of our courses to the context for our clients. This is really important because we believe training really is a communication tool for the expectations at your company. And so your context is extremely important for you to then apply the learnings to your day-to-day. And all of our engagements are headed by our invested experts, such as Joe Ghali here. Sounds like we have a couple folks in the audience right now who've already experienced how magical Joe is, but him and his group of invested experts, our deep bench of product management experts, all have decades of product management experience, leading teams at a number of different well-known organizations. Okay, so, and I said it before, and I'm going to repeat it again. Please ask questions. These webinars really are for you. And so we want to take your questions. We'll take as many of them as possible live, and we'll even interrupt if I see, or Joe or I see a relevant question asked in either the chat. You can also use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen to ask a pointed question as well there. I'll answer the one that we get the most common, which is, can I watch this later? And yes, everyone, every participant or even registrant will get a link for the webcast recording after it has ended. Next slide. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, for those of you also, I think we're also live on LinkedIn, but feel free to also join our LinkedIn group. It's got something like 50,000 members in the product management community. Use it as a way to network with your peers, ask each other questions, share best practices, and stay on top of the most pressing product management topics. There's a QR code and a link is also in the chat. All right, Joe, why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, so, let's help you get that new dream job, right? Whether you're new into product management or you're a product manager and you want to grow in your career, we're going to talk how we're going to do that in three ways, right? How do you get discovered? Rena's going to cover getting that interview. Once you get discovered, we're going to help you with some techniques to help you really stand out as a candidate. What should you be prepared for when you walk into an interview? And then once you've gotten that dream job, how do you build your network? How do you continue to build up your product management strength, leveraging your personal network, or as we call it, our personal board of directors? So with that, and we'll, like Rina said, we're going to take questions as we go through each of these agenda topics. So you don't have to wait to the end to ask us questions. Feel free to put something in the chat and we can definitely take a pause and ask those questions for you. I have some questions already for Rina for even her section, so I'm excited to see what she's got to say. And Rina, let's get started with getting the interview.
Yeah, and as Joe said, what we wanted to do was really think about how do you not just get the job, but how to get the job, you have to get noticed. And so what we thought about is the platform that most likely is going to be used by any hiring manager right now is LinkedIn. So what we want to go into is being thoughtful about how do you leverage this tool to get noticed. And that's really your LinkedIn strategy. And so we're going to go into it. It's pretty simple. Your LinkedIn strategy should cover three things. It should cover your profile. It should cover how you engage with people on LinkedIn. And I'm also going to talk to you about the magic of video. So first, with your profile. Okay, I hope everybody here has a LinkedIn profile, but many of you are not thinking about it as your online digital resume, which is really what LinkedIn is. And so here's just some key advice from me, because I hire. So when we hire, when we have a new opening, LinkedIn is almost always like the first platform we go to. And I get inundated all the time with different people who are who are seeking the next role, and I go to their profile, and what I care about is across the real estate of that profile. It's not just the photo; it's a tagline. So, how do you talk about yourself very briefly in the first few sentences? It's the first thing that my eye sees outside of the imagery, and I often come across profiles where all I see in terms of the experience is just essentially the company name. And there's no description of what the company is. If the company's well known, that's great. But there's almost nothing. It's almost like you're not really like the people who have these profiles aren't really using them as a resume. And so my advice right now is take a look at your profile and say, what does this represent about me? Am I using the real estate of the profile to put myself forth as a candidate from the perspective of the hiring manager? Because it's not about me, it's about my audience. And that's really key with LinkedIn. Don't all forget about recommendations as well. Oftentimes we don't really see many recommendations for profiles, and that's because people aren't really that used to giving them on LinkedIn. But if you have somebody, a peer or somebody that you worked with before, I really do have the advice of get the recommendations visible on your profile, because people do read those, especially when you're hiring. Okay, can you keep next one? So the next one is engagement. Okay. This kind of ties in a bit with my next point, but when you are looking for your next role, what I encourage you to do is actually take a look at who works at this company, who could possibly be the hiring manager, and do they post? A lot of hiring managers, a lot of people later on in their career, they're using LinkedIn also as a platform for their thought leadership. But it's really hard to get picked up on LinkedIn. So the way that LinkedIn algorithm works essentially is that people interact with your posts. And that's why anybody who is posting on LinkedIn, what they want are comments. And funny enough, what I am showing here is more likely what you will see is a lot of people interacting and liking a post and very few comments. And this is across the board. And so that's one of the ways in which you can personally stand out is once you see a company is hiring and you've identified the person who is likely to be seeing your resume, for you to stand out as a candidate, I ultimately recommend, if this is the case, comment. Doesn't matter what you comment, just say something, because what that means is now instead of 7 comments, there are only 8, and that person will notice you. 100% they will notice you commenting on their things. And so do not be afraid. I feel like sometimes with social media, it's like hard, especially if you don't know the person. But this is kind of cool because you can actually comment on people you're not even connected with. So this is a really great way to stand out with anybody on LinkedIn that could be in the position of reviewing your resume. And next slide. Okay, so if you've noticed the job that was on LinkedIn, and you've found the hiring manager, here's a couple of points of advice here. Okay. As somebody who has hired on LinkedIn, I get something like over 100 connection requests from candidates because I think it's smart, right? People think, okay, you're hiring, so let me connect with you. This is an easy way to get lost. You're already going to get lost if you just apply without doing anything else. But connection requests are not enough. It's just not. The reality of today is there's a lot of people you're competing with. And so what I encourage people to do actually is send a video message. You can record one. There's a lot of tools out there you can record video with. I think LinkedIn even has a native feature. But few hiring managers receive any videos. And me, if I get something like that, if I get something personalized that I know it's not just a copy and paste and it's less than 3 minutes, I'm going to watch it. So that's another really easy way to stand out. It's not just a connection request. It's not just a profile. It's also what effort are you putting in that shows me that you really care about the position. And a video tells me as a hiring manager, I get to listen to how you think, how you present yourself. You have this golden opportunity to get 3 minutes of my attention that I didn't even know I was going to give you. And so use this wisely and use it well. So that's my LinkedIn strategy advice.
So Rina, question, we got an email prior to the webinar. Okay, we talk about videos, right? You know, I'm a candidate. There's a job I'm looking forward to or that I want to apply to. What should they talk about in the 3-minute video? Should they try to race through their resume in 3 minutes? Should they call to attention a specific job or experience? Like how should they best maximize those 3 minutes?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So in a video, usually you want to have it be very structured and very similar to the first kind of question. It's like, why do you care about this job? That's really what you're answering. Do not go into depth about your experience because I can just click on your profile and I will see it written out there. If there's something relevant, if there's a story that's relevant that you saw, for example, if you saw in the hiring post that let's just say that the job included, requirement is really great at stakeholder management. I'm just picking this out and you have a story to share and say, okay, based on this job posting, I know that you're looking for somebody who has this experience and expertise, and let me share this with you. That's probably better because it tells me you read the posting and it tells me you did some research on the company. And what I'm again curious about is just how do you present yourself? Because the goal here is not to give me a complete overview of who you are and why I should pick you. It's just to get me interested to give you that first interview. You're supposed to be using this as a way to get in the door, not as a way to completely sell yourself through, because you're going to get that opportunity in the actual interview.
So you mentioned that you get a lot of connection requests or emails. How do you get the video? Like, how do you let the person at the other end know, hey, I have a video? Is it just in the subject line of the email? Or do you email them? Do you still do a connection? Like, how do you let them know that you have a video of yourself that you want to
In
share?
a connection request, so again, don't do this on your phone because once you connect with somebody on LinkedIn on your phone, it just sends the connection request. When you connect with a web browser on your laptop, computer, you're able to then write a quick message to the person. And you can include a link to a Loom video, for example, that shows like, hey, I saw this job posting. I'm really excited. I created this video to share just a bit about what I thought about it. And that's really enough. And I do watch those videos because guess what? By the way, read the instructions. That's the other thing. When we post when we post a job posting, we usually have specific instructions of what we expect from our candidates. Those often get ignored. So the people who follow the instructions get a bonus. So what I'm saying, the reason why I'm saying that is I've actually requested videos before. And when I requested videos, I got something like less than a dozen. Okay.
Okay, that's good to
So
know.
very
That's
few
good to know.
people do actually do this.
Okay. That's good to know. And you mentioned Loom, there's
Mhm.
Vimeo, there's a lot of different tools out there. We just want to make sure candidates know to make it private, or password
Sure.
protected so that it doesn't get out in the wild, or that you don't want your current employer to find out that you're posting videos or for them by accident to see it. So you got to be careful about making it private, correct?
That's right. That's a good point. Thank you,
Yeah.
Joe.
All right, so I'm going to take the baton from Rina here. And we're going to talk about, all right, you've now gotten the attention of the recruiter or the hiring manager. And we're going to talk about how do you stand out? Okay, but before we do that, we want to ask you guys a question, a poll question. So how do you currently work to enhance your PM skills? Rita and I are interested in knowing what are some of the techniques our audience today leverages to build up their PM chops. What are some of those techniques? So Jerry, if you want to spin up the poll, let's see what our audience has been up to these days.
Right. All right. So the poll has launched.
Yep.
And this is related to this will help us, Joe and me, to guide the following discussion because we want to know what do people currently know how to do and what is just as important, what don't people do today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I always
So
consider this like a horse race. So right now in the lead is the certifications and courses, which is good because that's kind of our jam, right? But mentoring, reading and research. Okay, good.
it's interesting that on the job has gotten the lowest, other than other.
I know. I'm
Yeah.
kind of surprised by that as well. All right, we'll give everyone just another minute here.
Okay.
I don't know about you. So while we're using this, I'll use this as a time to call out our new podcast. So Productside Stories with Rina. I actually had a coworker of mine, a student I taught, and I called out our new Productside podcast. And I think we had one around like the first 90 days, right? We've had different leaders from different industries talk about their experiences. We talk about like beta testing or running pilots, right? We have our Women in Product Management series. There's really good opportunities when you're on the go to build up your product management knowledge. It's a passive way where you don't feel like you have to set aside time. You can leverage that time that you're like walking your dog or going on a walk to kind of build up some of that PM knowledge.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Joe. It's been really fun to actually talk to people. So
Yeah.
it's wonderful to hear that people are getting a lot of value from listening.
Yeah, and we have a question already, so let's share the results. So Alejandro, do you want to put the question in the chat? And we
Sorry, Joe, we
can,
already shared the results. You want to keep going?
yeah, I'm going to share them right now. All
No,
right.
we going.
No, so it looks like PM courses, workshops, and certifications, Rena, is our winner with a tie between mentorship and reading and research, coming in second as the second most popular way to enhance PM skills.
Great. Well,
Excellent.
so one of the things that we do at Productside is we run a benchmark. So Joe, can you move to the next slide?
Yeah.
Thank you. So one of the things that, so like as I mentioned, we run a global skills benchmark every year. And one of the things that we try to do with this benchmark is understand as product managers, when they're in the early stages of their career and they advance, what are some of the differences that we can find in terms of the strengths and the weaknesses at each level? And because we can identify at early career product managers tend to be weakest in certain skills, our recommendation for hiring managers is you should have a practical way to test for these kinds of skills as part of your interview process. And one of them, I think Joe is going to kind of go into, and that's why we ask, like, how do you improve your skills today? Because that helps you understand strategically of how do you stand out as a candidate amongst your peers. So Joe, why don't you share how to improve your skills in at least one of these areas?
Yeah, and then we'll get to, there was a question from the Q&A arena real quick. It was, does Productside offer any hands-on experience with real-world products or, for example, an internship? So how do you want to answer that?
So I will say, so our courses are devised very specifically to have practical hands-on experience built into them. The way our courses are built, there's usually in an hour of a class, there's usually about 20 minutes of lecture, 20 minutes of hands-on experience actually practicing it, and then 20 minutes of class discussion where you actually learn how other people approach that same problem. This is really helpful because yeah, there's a lot of different ways in which an internship can, on the job experience is very, very important. But in a classroom setting, you have the benefit of it being a safe environment, working on a problem that you can actually articulate also in an interview, and you get direct feedback from peers, and you get it from a person like Joe, who is there to also mentor you along the way.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of our public classes, right, Rina, in terms of you get to meet people from other industries, you get to meet other peers. It's another way to build up your network and your peer group in terms of bouncing ideas off of each other. So we talk about how do you stand out? So you've gotten the attention of the recruiter, you're going in for an interview. How do you stand out as a candidate? And so I want to start with some of the basics, right? Going into that interview, in the back of your mind as a product leader, you got to remember something, right? On average, right? When we ask this in our classes, people are surprised when we tell them the percentage of products that fail today, meaning companies rolled something out either internally or externally, and it hasn't gotten the adoption that they had expected. So why is there such a high failure rate, right? Having that in the back of your mind is important because it can kind of formulate how you prepare for that interview. And one of those primary reasons that we talk about in our class is we don't understand the customer needs, right? We don't understand what pains they're running into, what obstacles are getting in their way. So when you're going in for that interview, this is where we would encourage you now more than ever, leverage some of the tools that are at your fingertips. I was talking to somebody the other day where, they wanted to better understand the market, right? The market that the company plays in, meaning who do they sell to? And we were talking about how they were using Copilot on that. They did a search on their website, they posted in there, and they use it as an opportunity to say, I want to get to better know the company that I'm interviewing. I want to know who their customers are, who are their buyers, right? And from there, they were doing a SWOT analysis. They were doing some details on analysis on personas, meaning like who are the actual users. And they're putting that in their back pocket because they wanted to be prepared when they went in for the interview to answer questions. Because ultimately, and Rina and I've seen this a lot lately with a lot of companies that are hiring PMs, your onboarding is a lot shorter than it was a year ago, 2 years ago. There's a lot of pressure to do more with less, and they're expecting you to hit the ground running. So I know from my own experience, if somebody comes into an interview and they have a pretty good handle on the market and the customers of my market, that tells me their ability to make an impact faster. That's going to be very appealing to me as the hiring manager. So leverage those AI tools that are out there to help you. Again, no one's going to quiz you and interrogate you, but at least be in a position where you can speak intelligently about the customer, about the company. What are some of their challenges that they're dealing with? And Rina and I were talking about this even a couple of weeks ago. What are some other techniques you can use going into your interview? And it made me think of a personal story. So for those who don't know, or those who know me really well, when I'm not moonlighting as a product coach, I'm also a girls softball coach. So that's me in the gray with the sunglasses. My daughter's number 5. And you may say, Joe, what does youth softball have to do with, getting ready for an interview? And the answer is really easy. This is Coach Jimmy. This is my daughter's coach. And before every game, he sits out and he watches the other team. He's watching them. He's watching the pitchers. He's watching them take infield. He is mentally preparing for what decisions he's going to make in the course of a game because he's gathering competitive knowledge, intelligence, so that way he can be more proactive. And the reason why this is important is, again, when you're walking into a job interview, leveraging AI tools like Copilot or ChatGPT, it can help you get an understanding of the competitive landscape that your company that you're interviewing with is handling or managing with right now. So the idea is demonstrating that you've been proactive, demonstrating that they're going to hire you. Your ability to make an impact right away is going to be a short runway, and that's going to be very appealing to that particular employer.
Yeah, and Joe, I've been talking to a lot of product leaders, and there is this, I think there's a really strong opinions either way on whether or not domain experience is important for the product manager role. But to your point is, right now, I am hearing more and more that product manager leaders are trying to hire product managers with some level or some I guess signal that they have some domain experience. So if you're interested in applying for a role where you don't have that, doing this kind of research, uh, the competitive analysis, and also really getting a really good understanding of that company's customer base shows or will show to the hiring manager that you are willing to put in the work, even if you don't have that level of domain expertise, that they can count on you for being a fast learner and for knowing enough about their market. Because the truth is, in the benchmark report we run every year, domain expertise, it's the it's the skill that ends up being one of the highest because it's also one of the things that you can really learn on the job. Other skill areas are really hard for somebody to get on the job. So to Joe's point, this activity will help you stand out because as his coach can do competitive analysis without knowing anything about really the other team, the players, their strengths and weaknesses, so can you, just by doing the research, prove that you're able to make a really good case for how you will be making decisions on the job.
Yep. And so actually to that point, there's a question. I'll pause here for a second, Rena. And the question says, what sources of information would you use to gain information about the industry? I'm going to tell you right now, I am a big fan of Microsoft Copilot because it's a dual search engine and AI tool. I'm telling you guys, you can do with some basic prompting, you can get some really good in market intelligence, just high level. No one's expecting you to be an expert, but at a high level understanding, even running a SWOT, you can do this in under 15, 20 minutes. You just got to get more comfortable with asking questions. And then I know a lot of people who get really fancy. They'll take those responses and put in a chat and then use that to formulate a response that they can use on a cover letter, or they can use it to build bullets that they're going to use in their video that they're going to send to the recruiter. Like you are armed with the tools today to do that in a more effective and efficient manner.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that is if you are trying to apply for a public company, a really great
Oh
place
yeah.
to start is the earnings report. So not just the annual report, but they have earnings calls. And you can also now, because of the tools available, you can put those earnings calls in ChatGPT, Claude, whatever you use, and ask it to summarize and try it. You can even ask it to pinpoint specific areas around technology and what the company is investing in or not. And so, again, to Joe's point, that definitely marry some of the traditional research techniques with AI to do this a lot faster and at scale if you're applying to a lot of companies.
Yeah. I'm very jealous of folks that are earlier in their career, because I definitely didn't have some of these tools in my tool belt. I had to go to the library and do some of that research myself. Maybe that was good, or maybe that was a sign of things to come, but I'll take it. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't have some of those tools. It made me stronger, I think. All
Yeah,
right, so
I will
where
say though that just because that people have the tools today, I don't think most people are using them. I don't think they are. And so that's just, again, another easy way to stand out from the crowd.
Yep. So Rena, we've talked about two techniques so far, right?
Mhm.
We've talked about building up your social presence in LinkedIn, how to be noticed, right? Engaging with the company, with the hiring manager. We talked about how to get noticed by the recruiter, using some techniques like video. Coming into this past discussion, okay, how do you build your credibility, arm yourself with the knowledge going into an interview, because you're going to go through several different interviews depending on the type of role you're going into. The third part of this discussion is really around, okay, you've gotten that job, right? Now you want to grow in your career. You want to grow into more leadership roles. How do you do that in a way where you can surround yourself with a term that Rina came up with, which I love. It's building your personal board of directors. And we'll talk about what that means.
I didn't come up with that term, but it's a
I've
really
never
good
heard of that term before until you told me about us. I think it's brilliant. I don't know. I didn't see it anywhere else. I just think it's a really cool way of thinking about it.
Mhm.
All right. So we have a poll question for you guys. And that is, where do you currently engage with your PM community? What are some ways that you perhaps talk to other PMs or other folks that are in the product space? So Jerry, if you can, it looks like she's got the poll out, and let's see how people respond.
And while this is going, so I realized that in my LinkedIn strategy, I can't believe I didn't think to say, not just engaging with other people, but don't forget to post.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I know it's super hard. Only 1 or 2% of people are actually in like the creator economy, but if I go on your profile and you don't have 0 posts, then you're not active. I don't know why it's like a negative signal for me. So even if it's just once a month, it's probably a good idea to just share some of your thoughts with the community.
Yep. So while we're finishing up the poll, there's a question in here, Rena, from the poll from the audience, and it says, how would you recommend to highlight that mindset of shared wisdom in the resume? Meaning, how do you leverage the knowledge you've gained or by the community you surround yourself? Like, how does that show up in your resume? That's a really
Well,
great question.
yeah, let's maybe take that one after we cover the personal board of directors.
Yeah, let's do that.
All
All
right.
right. So, Jerry, let's go ahead. I'm going to share the results. It looks like the overwhelming winner here is LinkedIn,
Mhm.
coming in at 47%. Slack communities I know are growing. And then a few of you don't have one. So that's right. If you want to know where people are going, LinkedIn is probably the first place you want to start, with Reddit and Discord as other options as well to build out that community. Okay, let's share those results with the group. All right. All right. So when we talk about mentorship, okay, what does that mean in the product management space? So I mentioned it a couple of slides ago. I'm a product coach, right? I love what I do for a living. I love what I do outside of work because I get to help people. And there are so many of us out there that want to be mentors. And, I was talking to another friend. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for my mentors, right? And what that means is I had someone named Dawn. Rina actually interviewed her for one of her Productside podcasts. I came out of IT. I went to college for IT. I thought I was going to be a database administrator. I was going to do SQL. And I got to know Dawn in my role, and I just kept interrogating her with questions in a nice way. And she finally said to me one day, she's like, Joe, have you ever thought about being a product manager? And I said, I don't even know what that means. And so, over the course of a few years, I got to learn more about her role. I loved how she was at the forefront of strategy. I loved the partnerships and the relationships she's built in the business world. And so she is really what motivated me to get into this space. And that's why it's important to find those folks around you, because many times they'll raise their hand and say, hey, do you need help? Like, hey, I'm happy to set up time with you, because nothing gives a professional in the product space or any space, to be honest, greater motivation than knowing that someone values their feedback. Like it's just people, there are so many of us out there that want to do that. But the key here is I asked so many questions. I got to see her in action. There's just so much you can glean and learn from your mentors, the mentors that you surround yourself with. I know, Rina, you've had a pretty similar experience in your career, right?
Yeah, I would say that one of the most important pieces of advice that I received, I think this was actually in college when, because mentorship comes up a lot. Like we talk
Yeah.
about it a lot because it's just, we know how valuable it is, was in terms of how to select the right mentors. I think you're actually going to go into that next. So I'll save
I
my comment
am. I
until
am.
you go, and then I'll share what I learned in college.
Yeah. So it depends on where you are in your journey in life with your career, even with your family, right? For me, Don Don and Jane got me kickstarted in the product management space. And then I met a gentleman named Fletch in Las Vegas. And this was a guy where he was managing 11 of the largest hotels in the world. And as a product manager, I was in awe of him because he had this balance between his personal life and his work, right? Now, so I was looking for someone to look up to say, can I balance? Can I have a positive work-life balance? And so it was understanding what your goals are professionally and personally, and finding those people that have the same goals that you have, right? And that's why I spent so much time with Fletch, because this was a guy, he got into work early, but man, he was out of there at 4:30 and he was at his kid's baseball game coaching by 5 o'clock, and no one could call him, no one could bother him, right? And so it's really understanding, he had the right experience. He and I had the same goals, and he would make himself available. Sometimes it'd be on a phone call, sometimes it'd be on a Sunday night, but he was making himself available, and I would make myself available at his convenience. And I think, right, Rina, you have to find
Mhm.
that balance. You have to find those individuals that align with where you want to go in your career and in your personal life, right?
So yeah, absolutely. And so, okay, going back to my story that I want to
Yeah.
share about mentorship, is, and I've added to it because of that conversation, Joe. But I was given the advice that you actually need to think about it as a like a board of directors. Um,
Am
to
I
a
the only
certain
one?
level of value, right?
Yep.
And can you hear me?
Yeah, you paused for a second there, but you're better now. You're good.
Okay, sorry, I'm traveling, so
Yeah, you're
hopefully
good.
the internet continues. Okay, so on a board of directors, each director has some point of value to bring. And the way to think about how do you select people for your personal board of directors is, originally it was 3 by 2, but now I'll add a third one. So up to 9 people. You want to look for people who are your peer level. You want to look for people who are above you, years out. And you also want to Ian's point, actually, Ian, I can't say your last name, Desrosiers, pointed out that one of the best ways learn is to teach others. And that's why in your board of directors, you should also pick a few people who are later in their career, sorry, earlier in their career. So after you. And to think about it, you need somebody who really understands your job. So pick people who are in product management. You also need to know people who can do things, who can help you think about your career. So people who might be in other careers, in alternate careers, but they know how to negotiate, they know how to get promotions, they know how to network, right? Other career oriented skills. And to Joe's point, the last one could be your personal life. So that's one that, to your point, Joe, there's more, right? There's more of what you can learn from people that is not just career oriented. Um, and they could have a spot on your personal board of directors. And yeah, I do recommend, again, peers, people who have more experience than you, and a few that has some less experience that you could be a mentor to them. But that relationship will often teach you even more.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's crazy how much I've learned mentoring other PMs in my career, as much as I've learned from the folks that were, more experienced than me. That's a very, very fair point. I didn't even
Yeah.
think
And
about that.
to the person who wrote about, there are negative role models in one of the questions. Yeah, you are right. Sometimes you don't know. It's I tend to be an optimist and believe in the best of people, but there are people out there who may not be a great role model. one way to counteract this is to be a great role model yourself. To that point,
Totally.
you can always be a role model to others.
Yep. So once you've identified your personal board of directors, right, how do you maximize that opportunity? Because it's a gift. The time that they're giving you or the time you're giving them, it's a gift. How do you make the most out of it? Right. So, like the slide says, be honest, be clear about the expectations. What goals or objectives do you have for the relationship? Right. It needs to be a two-way conversation, right? It has to be a two-way conversation. You have to have some level of commitment and cadence with your mentorship. And we got to have a high degree of trust with this individual, right? You got to be vulnerable. I was definitely, you know, uh, I was definitely vulnerable with a few of the folks that are in my personal board of directors, because it's like, can this be even done? Can I do what I want to do and still have the balance that I'm looking for? And the beauty about some of these mentorship relationships is they're going to give you feedback. I'll be honest, Dawn and Jane were brutally honest with me sometimes. I'm like, whoa, right? And it was more around, how do you manage the feedback of stakeholders? How do you demonstrate humility, right? I learned that humility was a very critical skill early on in my product management career growth, right? I used to think I had to know everything, and I'd go crazy if I didn't. And a few of them were like, I remember Joe, you can't know everything. You just got to know who to know, right? And be honest, because that's part of being a really effective product leader. And talk about how can you apply some of those lessons in real world scenarios. So it never ends. It grows, it evolves as you grow in your career. But that's really, you've got a gift, take advantage of it.
And to just answer, to kind of like take this time to answer the question that we received about how do you highlight the idea of a board of directors in your resume? I don't think it really belongs in the resume per se. I think it's instead something that you can use to during the interview process. So ways to include even the concept is you probably want somebody on your personal board of directors who can help you prepare for interviews and be a sounding board. And you can also bring in some of the stories that you learned from your mentorship when asked some of the questions. Now, I don't know specifically, but definitely use the STAR or the START method, depending on which one you could look it up afterwards, to create stories that you might be able to share. Hey, in your experience, like when you were in a tough situation, what did you do? You can involve a story of, when I'm in these kinds of situations, I like to reflect, I like to talk them through. I find talking it through this kind of person who is actually one of my mentors is really helpful. Like that's just a way you could bring it in.
Yeah, totally. So there's another question here, Rina. Do we want to use this as a time to start our Q&A, or do we want to go through some of the...
Let's go through the slides and then we're going to head into Q&A. So if there are questions that you have about landing your PM job, please send them over. And then we also have some additional questions. But as promised at the start of this webinar, I did say that we will be offering some free templates for you. Here are QR codes. You can download these templates at any time. One of them is a career planning template. It's something that you can use with your board of directors or your manager, if you currently have one, to basically say, what are my career goals, and then work backwards from your career goals to what you should be doing today. And our How to Get Hired workbook goes into more of the specifics around interview prep and what to do about case studies and things like that. So if you are coming and interested in how do I get hired and how do I prepare for an interview, this is a really great workbook to download and really goes into depth on popular case studies and interview questions and all of that. So please download those now. They're also available on our website. Keep going, and Joe, until we hit the Q&A.
Yep.
For those of you who said one of the ways that you get prepared is through certification courses, and I mentioned it earlier, our courses are really designed to be completely practical and applicable to your product management job. They're good for if you are just starting out and early in your career and want to just understand, how do I become a product manager? Is a product management role? What are the expectations of me? Or if you have a few years of experience and are still struggling on how to be proactive and strategic and really want to stand out and get a promotion, or if you're a leader who has a team and everybody's kind of doing it a little bit differently and you want to level set your team, our optimal product management course is really great. We also have an agile course coming up with Joe, teaching it in June. And this week we are running our product management day sale, commemorating the day that it all started, May 13th. I think it was 1931 or 32, with a big sale on all of our courses. So feel free to go on our website and save today. Keep going. And then something else that we wanted to kind of just mention to the community, that we know the market is what it is, and education and certification courses are another great way to stand out if you're a candidate looking for your next role. And there are grants currently available. And because Productside partners with the Association of International Product Marketing and Management, our courses come with an industry standard certification path, which makes them applicable to receiving federal funding to pay for your courses. So take a look at the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act and see if you are interested in getting a grant to pay for your certification course. Now let's go into Q&A.
Yeah.
All right. So which one do you want to answer first? Do you want to go?
Yeah, so the first one came from an anonymous attendee. It says, there are many CEOs and product managers who have made critical mistakes in their career. This prevents them from attempting to return to their careers. But in my opinion, it is precisely those professionals who can become most conscious in their actions in the future. What do you think about this perspective?
Yeah, can I get that one?
Yeah, you got that one.
Oh man. All right. So let me say this. Product management and being a CEO, it's hard. You have to make a lot of decisions. There's a lot of responsibility for product managers. There's a lot of accountability sometimes, and I just wrote about on LinkedIn. Sometimes there's little appreciation and there's a lot of accountability and a lot of pressure. And I think it burns a lot of people out. And especially if you make mistakes, and everybody makes mistakes, because mistakes are just, they're part of the experience of doing something challenging and working really, really hard. Product managers and CEOs are trying to make better decisions using data, using the information that they have, and they try to do it in the best way and pivot as needed, etc. But it's hard. At the end, it is hard. Great people in general, when they go and take on these paths, sometimes they can burn out. It is true. But it's also part of the growth mindset of realizing that mistakes, no matter how hard they are, that's where the learning happens. And I agree with you that people who have made mistakes in their careers, if they have a learning and growth mindset, are the ones who would be great to mentor and to give advice and learn from. But you can't control other people. So it's really up to them on their own personal journey as to whether or not they are ready to advance in their career, ready to make those hard decisions again. So you can't answer that for other people, but I would agree with you that those people, if they can learn, they're usually really, really great to have in your personal board of directors.
That's awesome. So the next question is, if you don't have a personal board of directors, where do you begin? How do you even reach out to people on LinkedIn? I know that there's a lot of fraud and scams and people won't answer any DMs. Do you have any advice? So I'll start with this one, Rina, and maybe you have some additional ideas. You know, we talked about the Productside community at the beginning of this webinar. Join us. Follow our coaches, right? Follow me, Dean, Ryan, Bill, the whole group. We got an awesome group of product coaches here at Productside. You'll see us posting pretty frequently. Get engaged, right? Find those individuals. Once you start following other like-minded product contributors, product leaders on LinkedIn, ask questions when they do posts, become visible. And, over time, some folks will start to respond to you. And when when that happens, use that as an opportunity to maybe send them a note separately and say, hey, I really like what you had to say. Can we just meet for 15 minutes virtually? And I just want to learn more about what you're doing. And, even if it's a 15-minute virtual coffee, I've done those, right? Or ask someone who is in the product space, hey, do you know of folks? Do you know of anyone that would be a good mentor? I've had people give me introductions all the time. So there are some ways where you're going to have to do a little bit of digging, but make your presence known. Like, it isn't just about using LinkedIn to share your knowledge, but it's also people are sharing their knowledge because they want people to find value. So go engage, ask questions, be inquisitive. Over time, you'll start to see who are going to be the most approachable people that you could reach out to on LinkedIn. I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to add anything to that, Rina.
Yeah, Kimberly, thank you for the question. So I kind of said it earlier with the LinkedIn strategy. So great. So, okay, there's two things. First, on LinkedIn, the way to reach out to people is you engage with their posts and activities. You comment. Don't just like, comment. You comment on a few, and then send a connection request. And in the connection request, feel just write something short about yourself. Not everybody will answer, but it's a numbers game.
Mhm.
So you have to go and reach out to LinkedIn will let you reach out to, I think the rule is to stay safe, less than a dozen a day. But a dozen is work. Like, it's work to find a dozen people to reach out to every day. But if you keep doing that, you will get more and more people. Now, board of directors wise, here's some advice. First, in order for somebody to spend a lot of time with you, usually they have to kind of already know you. So if you don't feel like you got that from your personal network today, I want to challenge you a little bit. You probably do have at least a couple people who might be willing to work with you. And maybe they're not the people that you feel are going to give you the most value today, but start there. Your personal board of directors can change over time as you develop the skill, but start developing that skill because it is a skill, it is work. I've offered to be a mentor to people, and I can tell you right now, most of them do not follow up after the first call. So it's because it's not me. I'm the mentor, but I'm not going to go chase my mentee. That's not. But I'm not thinking like that. So it is work, but you get a lot of value out of it, and so you have to put in the effort.
Yeah. All right. This is from Jody. What advice do you have for someone trying to re-enter the product management role after being away from 5 years? Ooh.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So a couple things. So if you were away from the completely career, like I don't know if you took away to care for an infant, a family member, or just took a break in your career, you have to then just reassess the expectations that you might have. You may not get the same kind of level or role that you did before, and um, that's just because you're competing with people who did not take that break. But I think that there's still a lot of ways for you to present yourself as a really capable candidate, and doing the steps that I kind of articulated just now. And try to find projects on the side. You can hustle. You can find projects on Upwork, for example, to kind of build up your resume again. Potentially doing some of that freelance work from a hiring manager's perspective, the question that they might have is not why you took the career break, but did you do you still know how to work? Like, can you function in an office environment? And so showing some of that hustle can really help um, present yourself as a candidate who does have a really strong work ethic, is really comfortable with new technology, etc. So just put in a little bit extra work that way.
Yep. So there's a question in here about international
Mm-hmm.
students looking for product management grants. I know the one that we
Yeah,
shared was here for domestic. I don't know if we have anything on international, right, Rina?
I wouldn't be able to tell you, so completely understand. We just know what's available in the US for grants. I do know, for example, the UK has some grants available. But this is something that you would need to that it's very, very region or government specific. So I don't really have too much knowledge here.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Atul gave some feedback. We just got a few more minutes here. It says, What are the toughest decisions you've had to make as a product manager? Whoa. I can answer that one. I'll start, and then maybe Rina,
Yeah.
if you have some. So it's whole, as a product leader, as a product contributor, there's a spotlight on you in the organization, right? You're the one that's going to pull the trigger on a big release. And the great thing about being a product manager is what I love about it is working across the organization, building strong relationships. It's what makes it awesome. It's the relationships for me. Some of the toughest decisions really are around those big launches, like whether it be launching an app or launching a big website, where it's been communicated around the organization and there are all these eyeballs on you, and you don't want to disappoint because the best product managers out there, they take their work pretty personally. It's like a brand, right? If something doesn't go right, they take it personally, like they did something like they feel like they're a failure. And so some of the toughest decisions are when we have to make the decision to say, guys, we're not ready. We're gonna have to wait. Because success isn't on-time delivery or meeting the budget. Success is, are you delivering value? Are you achieving the outcomes that you set forth? And that's a tough trade-off. But a mentor once told me after one of these instances happened, he said, Joe, in a year, no one's going to remember that you delayed the launch. They're going to remember how you launched. Right. So when I think of like tough decisions, Rina, that's probably what comes to my mind. We ran
I was
into that
actually
at
gonna,
Productside, right? When we were making
yeah.
a decision on launch, you were in that boat as well, right?
So I actually would have, I lean towards exactly what Ian actually just wrote in chat. It's not about when, for me, it's not about when to move forward. I get it, like the launch, it is a tough decision, but for me, I think the hardest decisions are to cut something that brings in revenue.
Oh,
That is probably the hardest thing. And that's because there's only so many resources. And I see it. I see it with companies when Adobe had to make that decision, for example, of like cutting their revenue generation to do subscription. That's a hard decision because nobody's happy and revenue is going to go down. And similar, Joe, the decision to rebrand to Productside, that's a tough decision because it hurts revenue to do that. You hurt your SEO, you hurt your brand recognition, but you have to do it for the long term. So making that long term decision versus the short term pain, as I think where for me gets toughest. Now I know we're going to go over, but I think we want to answer maybe one more question, and because I saw two come in that were basically similar, and that's about not about career breaks, but transitioning from another role into product management. And this one from marketing to product management, how do you get considered? So if your career went in a different way, how do you then transition back to product management? Joe, do you want to take this one?
yeah. I love this question from Kimberly because Kimberly, when we get in front of teams, I always tell the product manager, your product marketing manager should be, you and that individual should be connected at the hip because the decisions that you guys make come from the same data points, meaning who are my users, what are their needs and wants, what's the objective that they're trying to achieve. It's once you have that understanding, you're going to go into different paths. One's going to go in the execution of the product. One's going to go into marketing and the awareness of the product. So there's a lot of parallels between a marketing role and a product role because at the end of the day, you will only be successful if you have true empathy for your customers and can understand who they are and what their needs are, right? How you execute upon it will be different based on the function that you're in. But I think if you're going from marketing to product, you're going to slide right in as long as you have that foundation.
Yeah, and again, I think with career going a different direction, remember your resume and your LinkedIn profile to position yourself for the career that you want. So remember, there's a lot of product management is one of those fields that there's a lot you can transition from other careers. A lot of it is transferable skills. So you can definitely, it's just about how do you position yourself as a candidate. And to Joe's point, if you're at a company where you can be side by side with product management and gain that experience, that's definitely a way to do it. All right, that
Absolutely.
ends our webinar for today. Joe, thank you so much for all of the insights, and I hope everybody here can walk away with a couple ways in which they can land that interview, stand out in their career, and then hopefully get a personal board of directors so you never have to interview again. But thanks so much for joining us, and reach out to us on LinkedIn, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.